Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. There is a version of you that haunts your mind, not because it is monstrous, but because it is powerful. You see it sometimes in dreams, you feel it, like a fire burning just beneath your skin. It is you, but unchained you. But alive, you are afraid of this self, because it is everything you were told not to be. The self you fear is the self you are meant to become. There is no light without shadow, and no wholeness without imperfection. C. G. Jung, you were not born to be small. You were not born to walk quietly through a world that demands your silence. You were born to expand, to stretch beyond the limitations that were placed upon you, even before you knew how to speak. But evolution is not gentle. It asks for everything. It asks you to shed the skin that once protected you, to speak the truth you once swallowed, to embrace the power you once feared. And so, when the world told you that your truth was too much, when your rage made others uncomfortable, when your sensitivity was mistaken for weakness, you did what so many of us do. You buried it. You tucked those parts of yourself away, into the unconscious, into the cellar of the psyche, where all inconvenient truths are sent to be forgotten. And Jung had a name for that cellar. He called it the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not a flaw. It is simply everything you were told not to be. It holds your rejected magic, your forbidden fire, your original voice before the world taught you to whisper. You are not afraid of your darkness. You are afraid of your strength, of how deeply you feel, of how clearly you see, of how much love, power, and truth you carry that doesn't fit inside the life you were taught to live. This is the tragedy and the opportunity of being human. We are all split. There is the person we present to the world, what Jung called the persona, and then there is the self waiting beneath that mask, aching to be remembered. The persona is the compromise. It is how you learned to survive in a world that could not see you. But the self you fear, the self you have spent your life avoiding, that self is who you truly are. And here lies the paradox. The only way forward is inward. The path to healing, to meaning, to becoming, is not found by striving to be better, safer, more acceptable. It begins when you turn around, descend into the dark, and retrieve the pieces of yourself you once exiled. The world will tell you to be bright but not blinding, to be strong but not threatening, to be intelligent but never confrontational. And if you listen too long, you will shrink. You will become a version of yourself so edited, so polished, so diluted that you no longer recognize the voice within you that once roared with purpose. But that voice is not gone. It waits in the shadow. The parts of you that are angry, messy, bold, passionate, strange, they are not problems. They are invitations. They are wild energies knocking at the door, saying, "Let me live, let me breathe, let me speak." If you do not face them, they will control you from the dark. They will seep out as projection. You'll judge in others what you have not accepted in yourself. You'll fear what you don't yet understand. But if you have the courage to turn toward the shadow, to enter the dark with open eyes, you will discover that what you feared was never your enemy. It was your power, your potential, your wholeness. There is gold in the shadow. Jung said, the shadow is 90% pure gold. And he was right. The shame you carry is the key to your authenticity. The pain you repress is the portal to your purpose. The voice you silence is the sound of your soul. And so, the call is not to destroy the shadow, it is to integrate it, to meet your rejected self with compassion, to reclaim what was once disowned, to say, "I see you, you are not wrong, you are mine." This is not easy. It will feel like dying, because a part of you is dying, the false self, the obedient self, the self that betrayed its own truth for belonging. But what rises in its place is something fierce and sacred, the whole self, not perfect, not pure, but real, integrated, alive, and from this place life begins to make sense. You no longer chase validation because you are rooted in your own truth. You no longer fear rejection because you no longer reject yourself. You no longer need to be loved by everyone, because you finally love the parts of you that no one else ever did. This is individuation. The process Jung spoke of, the journey of becoming your true self, not an ego inflated with pride, but a soul reunited with all its lost pieces. So if you feel lost, good. If you feel broken, even better. Because wholeness is not found in perfection. It is found in the integration of opposites, and your fear, it is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something sacred is approaching. So the next time you feel it, that trembling in your chest, that pull toward the unknown, that resistance that says, not me, not yet, remember, the self you fear is the self you are meant to become. Society trains you to be predictable. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. C.G. Jung, from the very beginning, you were being shaped. Before you could form your own words, you were absorbing the expectations of others. Be polite. Don't speak too loud. Smile. Say thank you. Don't cry. These lessons were not always cruel. They were taught in the name of love, safety, belonging, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, they carved you into something smaller than your true nature. You began to learn that certain feelings made others uncomfortable. Certain ideas made you strange. Certain dreams were too big, and so you learned the game. You learned to play the part. You constructed a persona, the social self, the version of you that could survive in a world obsessed with rules, order, and sameness. The persona is not a lie, but it is not the whole truth either. It is the mask you wear to be accepted. You became predictable, polished, acceptable, and with each performance you drifted further from the raw, radiant truth of who you were before the world had a say. The real you, the wild, intuitive, soulful self, was silenced, not destroyed, but buried. It waits behind the mask. It watches. It remembers. Society fears the unpredictable. It fears people who are not easily controlled or categorized. It fears those who ask uncomfortable questions, who feel deeply, who choose authenticity over approval, and so it trains you to conform, to follow the script, to stay in line. But the truth is this: to become who you are meant to be is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of remembrance. You are not creating a new self. You are returning to the self that existed before the world told you who to be. This return can feel terrifying, because the mask has become familiar. It has kept you safe, but it has also kept you small. To take it off is to risk judgment, to face uncertainty, to speak the truth no one else dares speak. But it is also the beginning of freedom, because beneath that mask is a voice you've forgotten how to hear, a wildness you've been taught to suppress, a purpose you've long buried under layers of politeness and performance. When you peel back the persona and let the real you breathe, the intuitive you, the creative you, the powerful, feeling, questioning you, you do not become chaotic. You become whole. Let society keep its rules. You were not born to be predictable. You were born to be real. The shadow holds your power. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. There are qualities you admire in others' fierce courage. Creative brilliance, emotional depth, magnetic confidence. You look at them and think, I wish I could be like that. But you are like that. You've simply forgotten, or worse, you've been taught to disown those parts of yourself. This is the hidden tragedy. The strengths you crave are not absent. They are buried deep in the unconscious, in what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is not the villain. It is not the dark, sinful self you must eliminate. It is the self you were told to suppress, the wild voice that said I want, the fire that said I will, the child that once said I am. But society didn't like that voice. It was too loud, too assertive, too alive, so you buried it. You replaced passion with politeness. You traded instinct for obedience. You learned to be good but not whole, and here's the truth that burns. You do not fear your weakness. You fear your power because power threatens the order you were trained to protect. It disrupts the identity you built to survive. You were taught that desire is dangerous, that speaking the truth will make people leave, that expressing anger is wrong, that claiming your worth is arrogant, and so your shadow grew. Every unspoken truth, every swallowed emotion, every abandoned dream, all of it lives there, not dead, but waiting. Jung did not believe the shadow was evil. He believed it was raw potential, unshaped, unclaimed, misunderstood. He said, the shadow is 90% pure gold. That means the very parts of you you're most afraid of, the parts you judge, avoid, deny, are also the most powerful. They hold the energy of the self, but energy that is repressed becomes distorted. When you reject your anger, it turns into passive aggression. When you hide your ambition, it turns into jealousy. When you suppress your desires, they erupt in self-sabotage. This is why the shadow must not be fought, but faced, to look at it without flinching, to say, I see you, I feared you, but you are mine. This is not a one-time ritual, it is a lifelong conversation. Shadow work is the inner alchemy, the turning of fear into freedom, shame into sovereignty, pain into power. You will meet your shadow in moments of conflict, in your defensiveness, in your projections. In the person who triggers you. That person is not your enemy. They are your mirror. And when you stop running from what you hate in others, when you ask, what part of me is this reflecting? You begin the sacred descent. Downward, inward, toward the truth, and what you find is this. You are more than you've been told, more than your roles, more than your image, more than your performance. You are rage and grace. You are shadow and soul. You are the storm and the stillness. You were never meant to be one thing. You were meant to be whole. Wholeness is not perfection. It is integration. It is walking through the fire of your own contradictions and coming out not burned, but illuminated. When you own your anger, it becomes boundary. When you own your desire, it becomes purpose. When you own your fear, it becomes wisdom. This is not an easy path. It is not comfortable to face the darkness within. But it is honest, and honesty heals. The self does not want your perfection. It wants your authenticity. It wants your return. So stop seeking your power in others. It's already in you, trapped in the very parts you've been trying to avoid. The shadow is not the end of your story. It is the doorway, the descent into the unknown. The threshold you must cross to meet your true self. Go there, not with judgment, but with curiosity, with courage. With love, you do not become worse when you face your shadow. You become real, you become rooted, you become free. Fear is the guardian of the threshold. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. C.G. Jung. Fear is not your enemy. It only looks like one when you try to run. We live in a world that tells us to escape fear, to numb it, to silence it, to distract ourselves with comfort, validation, and endless noise. But Jung understood something different. He knew that fear is not a wall, it is a threshold, a sacred boundary between who you've been and who you are meant to become, and like all thresholds, it is guarded. Not by monsters, but by you, the part of you still holding onto the past, clinging to the familiar, grasping at the illusion of safety. When you feel fear rising as you express your truth, as you say no, as you finally speak the words that have burned in your throat for years, that fear is not a sign to retreat. It is a signal that you are standing at the edge of your old identity. Fear whispers, are you sure you're ready to let go of who you've been? Are you ready to lose what once protected you? Are you prepared to be seen in your fullness, even if it means being misunderstood? And that's why it's terrifying. Not because you are in danger, but because you're changing. Every great transformation is preceded by fear. not the kind that warns you of physical threat, but the kind that warns you of psychological rebirth. The ego clings to the known. It prefers the discomfort of what is familiar over the unknown vastness of authenticity, and so it resists, it shakes, it screams, but this fear is not a punishment, it is a guardian. A gatekeeper standing at the door of your becoming. It says, if you want to enter, you must leave something behind. Sometimes what you must leave behind is your silence. Sometimes it's your guilt, your self-betrayal, your need to be liked, your addiction to being the person others want you to be, and letting go of those parts feels like death, because in a way it is. It's the death of a former version of you, a self shaped by survival, not by truth. But what waits beyond that fear is not emptiness. It is life, real, unfiltered, soul-rooted life. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he never said it would be easy, because the journey to the true self passes through the valley of fear. When you feel it rise as you choose to write, speak, create, love, or walk away, don't run. Pause, breathe, look it in the eye. Ask your fear, what are you trying to protect me from? Listen, it may tell you, I don't want you to be abandoned again. I don't want you to be humiliated. I don't want you to be alone. Fear often holds the voice of the inner child, and that child doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be held. Tell it, I see you, I know you're scared, but we are safe now, we are allowed to grow. Fear doesn't disappear in that moment, but it begins to soften, to trust, to transform. This is the paradox. The more you walk through fear, the more fear becomes a compass. It shows you where the growth is. It points to the places where your false self dies and your true self begins to rise. So when you feel fear as you step onto a stage, have a hard conversation, reveal your art, or leave what no longer serves you, recognize it for what it is, a sacred sign, an inner bell ringing at the door of your evolution. You are not weak for feeling fear. You are strong for standing in it, for not letting it define you, for walking through the fire even with trembling legs, and on the other side of that fire you'll find a version of yourself you forgot existed, the one who trusts her voice, the one who honors his truth, the one who no longer needs permission to be whole, because you no longer seek to become someone. You've remembered who you were beneath the armor. Fear is the guardian, but you are the key. When you walk toward what you fear, you don't just find courage, you find yourself. The real you is not always comfortable. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. C. G. Jung, the real you might not be easy to digest. You might be wild. You might speak truths that tremble the room. You might laugh too loud, cry too deeply, love too freely, question too much, and that is not a flaw. That is a signal that you are still alive beneath the conditioning. But the world doesn't always welcome the real. It wants neatness, polish, predictability. It wants smiles without depth, confidence without risk, beauty without soul. And so, from a young age, you were shaped not into yourself, but into something more comfortable for others. You learned which parts of you were celebrated and which were shamed. You began to edit your laughter, soften your voice, tame your ideas, and shrink your radiance so others could feel safe in your presence. The tragedy is not that others didn't understand you. It's that you began to understand yourself through their eyes. But here's the truth. Your soul was never designed for comfort. It was made for authenticity, and authenticity, by its nature, disrupts. Jung knew this well. He said that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires standing apart. Not in arrogance, but in truth. The real you will not always be agreeable. You might challenge your family's beliefs. You might say no to what generations said yes to. You might choose solitude over empty company, truth over tradition, freedom over fitting in. And that choice, that sacred, often lonely choice, is where your real self begins to emerge. But it comes with a cost, because being real means being willing to disappoint others. It means losing roles you were praised for, identities you were rewarded for, and connections that only survived the performance of you. This is not a path for the faint of heart. It's the path of those who would rather be whole than liked, honest than admired, free than approved of. Sometimes people will leave when you show them the real you. Let them. They were in love with your mask, not yourself. Sometimes you will feel naked, exposed, misunderstood. That is not failure. That is growth. Because every time you honor the self within, you shed another layer of the persona that never fit. The world might label your realness as too much, too intense, too different, too emotional, too deep. But Jung taught us these very traits, those that make you feel different, are often gifts in disguise. They are soul markers, proof that you are tuned into something deeper, something eternal. The real you is not always convenient. You may feel joy in stillness while others chase noise. You may seek depth while others cling to surfaces. You may grieve what others celebrate, and celebrate what others dismiss. This is not madness. This is alignment, because the more you reclaim who you truly are, your sadness, your passion, your dreams, your boundaries, the more you realize you were never here to belong to the world. You were here to belong to your soul. It's easy to play roles, the caretaker, the achiever, the nice one, the spiritual one, the strong one. But who are you when no one is watching? What do you love when no one is approving? Who do you become when you are finally free to be? That's the sacred question, and the real you might not always be beautiful in the ways the world defines beauty. You might be messy, you might contradict yourself, you might feel like a paradox, but realness is not found in symmetry. It is found in wholeness. Jung said that the goal of life is not perfection, but completeness, and completeness includes both your brilliance and your brokenness. It means carrying your doubt and your fire, your tenderness and your strength, your wisdom and your wounds as sacred, equal parts of your becoming. So know, the real you is not always comfortable, not for you, not for them, but the comfort you trade is nothing compared to the aliveness you gain, because when you stand in your truth unmasked, unapologetic, unmoved by others' discomfort, you awaken something ancient within you. Something free, something divine. You remember you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to shine through. You were never meant to be liked by everyone. You were meant to be real with yourself. Let the world feel what it feels. Let them be stirred, rattled, confused. Your only task is this: be the truth, even when it shakes the room, even when it's inconvenient, even when you stand alone, because in that realness you don't just find yourself, you find your soul. Integration is the path to power. I'd rather be whole than good. C.G. Jung. To become who you are afraid to be is not an act of destruction, it is an act of return. Not to who you were before the world shaped you, but to the whole of who you've always been, beneath the silence, beneath the wounds, beneath the masks. Integration is not a self-help trend. It is the ancient task of the soul. And it is not easy, because to integrate yourself is to face everything you've buried: your fear, your desire, your anger, your longing, your shame, your wild, untamed joy, the child you silenced, the artist you mocked, the lover you abandoned, the warrior you feared. They are all still there, waiting in the dark, not to sabotage you, but to complete you. Jung called this the process of individuation. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about becoming someone whole, not a fractured persona, not a collection of roles and performances, but a living, breathing soul in harmony with itself. You don't gain power by denying your darkness. You gain power by learning to hold it. The parts of you you've labeled too much or not enough are not problems. They are powerful ingredients waiting to be integrated. They are chapters in your becoming, not stains on your worth. Your trauma It taught you to feel deeply. Your rage, it reveals where your boundaries were violated. Your sadness, it proves you cared. Your dreams, they whisper who you are meant to become. Your mistakes, they are maps. None of these parts need to be erased. They need to be seen, honored, integrated. You are not here to choose between light and dark. You are here to merge them, to stand in the center of your complexity and say, I am all of this. The tenderness and the fire, the silence and the storm, the logic and the longing. Integration means holding the opposites. It means loving the sinner in you as much as the saint. It means letting your pain speak, not to dominate you, but to teach you. You are not broken. You are unified through fracture. Every scar, every shadow, every secret you've hidden is part of your sacred puzzle. You are not less because of what you carry. You are more because you've carried it, and still you rise. This path is not clean. It's messy, ugly, raw, because real healing isn't soft and glowing. It's wild and sacred and honest. To integrate is to stop splitting yourself into acceptable and unacceptable. It's to say, I will no longer exile pieces of myself just to be loved. It's to reclaim your anger, your sexuality, your voice, your instincts, not to act them out, but to own them. When you own your shadow, it no longer owns you. When you bring light into your wounds, they no longer bleed in secret. When you stop trying to be perfect, you begin to be real. And being real, fully, fiercely, unapologetically real, is the source of your true power. But it takes courage, because integration means confronting the ghosts you've avoided. It means sitting with the parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable. It means asking, what have I disowned that is still part of me? What have I been running from that is actually the key to my strength? Maybe it's your sensitivity, maybe it's your rage, maybe it's your intuition, maybe it's your ambition. Whatever it is, bring it home. You cannot become whole by cutting yourself into pieces. You cannot become powerful by pretending to be small. You cannot become free by denying the truth of who you are. Integration is the quiet revolution. It's the inner work no one sees, the late-night journaling, the tearful therapy sessions, the breath caught in your throat when you speak your truth for the first time, the stillness after the storm when you realize, I survived and I didn't abandon myself this time. You begin to walk differently. You begin to speak with depth. You begin to attract people who see all of you, not just the mask. Because once you've integrated your inner world, you no longer seek others to fix you, complete you, or define you. You become rooted, not perfect, but present, not flawless, but whole, and that wholeness, that raw, beautiful, sacred wholeness, is what makes you powerful. Because now, nothing within you is foreign. There are no more monsters in the basement, only lost children you've welcomed home. So take the journey inward, not to erase your past, but to redeem it, not to fix yourself, but to embrace yourself. Because when you integrate the fullness of who you are, your history, your pain, your dreams, your darkness, you don't just find peace. You find power. You cannot awaken while hiding. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. C.G. Jung, you cannot awaken while pretending. You cannot become your true self while hiding in the costume of someone else. You cannot remember who you are while trying so hard to be what others need you to be. As long as you pretend to be small, as long as you keep your voice low, your desires buried, your brilliance dimmed, you remain asleep to your own soul. To awaken is to emerge from hiding, not just from the world, but from yourself. Because somewhere along the way you learned to camouflage your light. You believed the lie that power is arrogance, that depth is too much, that presence is dangerous. So you twisted yourself into a shape that would be safe, pleasing, predictable. You sacrificed truth for comfort, authenticity for acceptance, and the worst part is you forgot you were doing it. That is the nature of sleep. It numbs, it blurs, it makes you forget that you once burned with something ancient and real. But the soul does not forget. It whispers, it aches, It sends longing like smoke signals through your chest, and one day you wake up and realize this small life is not your life, this mask does not fit. These roles do not nourish, this silence is not peace, it is suffocation. Awakening is not an event, it is a revolt against your own forgetting. It is the moment you say, no more shrinking, no more pretending, no more waiting to be chosen by a world that does not see you. You were not meant to remain invisible. You were not meant to bury your voice beneath politeness, fear, or perfectionism. You were meant to expand, to stretch into the full height of your truth, to disturb the old version of yourself and shed it like dead skin. But shedding is terrifying, because even if your cage is small, it's familiar. Even if your persona is limiting, it's safe. To awaken is to leave the comfort of who you were. It's to stand naked in front of your soul and say, I am ready to be seen, even by me. That is the most terrifying part, not being seen by others, but by yourself. To look into your own eyes and tell the truth about your dreams, about your shame, about your longing, about your avoidance, about the life you were born to live and how long you've been delaying it. Awakening demands honesty, it demands courage, it demands a deep, unwavering willingness to face your own reflection and say, I want more than survival, I want truth. This kind of truth cannot coexist with hiding. You cannot become whole while editing yourself for comfort. You cannot meet your destiny while avoiding your discomfort. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. To awaken is to make the unconscious conscious. It is to pull your hidden self out of the shadows and say, you are welcome here now. The parts you thought you had to kill to be loved, your sensitivity, your desire, your power, they do not need to be killed. They need to be reclaimed. As long as you hide, you betray them. You betray yourself. But when you stop hiding, when you begin to show up as you are, speak your truth without apology, stand in your contradictions with grace, you begin to remember what it means to be fully alive. No longer defined by others' opinions, no longer governed by fear, no longer intoxicated by approval, you become rooted in something deeper, something real, something new. But awakening is not glamorous. It is not found in hashtags and highlight reels. It happens in the quiet, in the ache of self-recognition, in the solitude where you meet your soul, in the tears that fall when you realize how long you've abandoned yourself. It is here in the brutal clarity of truth that you begin to return, and as you awaken, you realize that you are not here to be perfect, you are not here to fit, you are here to awaken the divine within you. To become the living embodiment of your soul's truth. Not everyone will understand, some will walk away, some will mock, some will beg you to return to sleep. Let them, you are not waking up for them. You are waking up for you, for your healing, for your voice, for your legacy, for the sacred path you came here to walk. So shed the disguise, let the old self grieve, let the false self die and rise. Not as a new version of someone else, but as the realest version of you. Because when you stop hiding, you stop merely surviving, you start becoming, and that is what it means to awaken.